Good morning, my friends. It's just gone witching hour here in Wellington, New Zealand. Moon is still up. Perfect time for a horror story, I think. In a big old wooden mansion. Let's go in, shall we? Shut the door. To keep the minions of hell at bay. Welcome. This is part of the first story from my book Betrayals and Entrails. This is part of a story called Sophie, about 30 pages in. It took Karen a few days before she felt okay about James returning to work. He took a second day off to be with her and Sophie, and when nothing happened, Karen had no solid reason for him to use up his leave. A week later, Sophie was playing in her parents' bed. Karen didn't mind, and she was still in her pajamas close to midday. They'd read a few stories together, Sophie sometimes picking out the simplest words, and nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. Karen hoped her daughter's experience, whatever it was, would stay in the past. It still haunted and had affected Karen's parenting to the point where she would have appeared to an outsider more relaxed. In reality, she was more distracted, more worried. She didn't want to think about it and hummed to herself as she prepared lunch for Sophie. She was, for the most part, unable to get the parasitic metal from Sophie's arm out of her mind. She was sure she had dreamt in the night it was a large obsidian mosquito plunging a dripping proboscis into fresh, warm veins, stealing the young one's life. Sophie's laughter could be heard from down the hallway. Karen began putting food on the table. "Sophie, come have lunch, dear." The giggling continued. She heard footsteps on the wooden hallway toward the kitchen, along with a loud, regular tapping noise that was in unison with the footsteps, as if Sophie was using a large walking stick. No doubt it was one of Oliver's toys. Karen couldn't think which one. They didn't have any canes or walking sticks in the house. Maybe a tennis racket. The noise stopped. "Mum," Sophie shouted. "The bad people did it to my foot." Karen leapt up off the chair, throwing the newspaper aside. She rushed into the hall, mind a whirling tremor. In the hall, Sophie had her pajama leg pulled up, and Karen was so disheartened to see the girl's right foot was completely robotic. It was not covered or coated with metal. It was metal. The foot itself was squared segments of black, too thin for there to be any human foot left. And when Karen removed the trousers, she saw Sophie's leg had been sliced off halfway down her thigh. A black metal disc covered the perfect cut. And a central black rod, barely the width of a thumb, travelled down the rest of the leg. At the ankle and knee joints were lines only just visible, and they sparkled with fluorescing lights. When Sophie bent at her knee, wriggled her foot, the lines moved to accommodate it, small sheets of metal moving out from under others. Karen gazed at the monstrosity, the house beginning to tilt, though her mouth was open to its zenith. She could not breathe until she fainted. She woke up to a silent, desolate hallway. "Sophie?" Her voice sounded horrid to her own ears. "Sophie? Sophie, where are you?" She ran into the living room, into the kitchen. No sign of her. She ran into Sophie's room, then into the room she shared with James. She thought her heart was going to collapse. Sophie was asleep in their bed. Her head was visible, nothing else. Karen wanted to hold her so much. She leant forward to pull the covers back and froze. Pulling the covers back was the most important thing, and the last thing on earth she wanted to do. What if Sophie had changed, like in the dream? What if her bed was full of Sophie's splattered guts and organs, the girl's body replaced by some futuristic cyborgian machine? What if Sophie was just a head on a little disc, and when Karen went to pull the covers back, her eyes would snap open and she'd grin with metal fluorescing teeth and zoom up into the air, saying, "Ha ha, mummy, look, I can fly, mummy, I don't have any arms, but it's okay because I can fly, I'm a bird, mummy, I'm a bird, they made me into a bird." Karen saw the shape under the covers and knew those things couldn't have happened. She forced her eyes to reel her fear back to reality. It was the shape of a little girl, her daughter. The outlines were clear under the duvet. There was no smell of blood. There was nothing to be afraid of. What if her head is unattached from her body and can fly, but the people just put her body back under the covers because they're cruel and they're watching us? If they put tiny cameras everywhere and they're going to laugh when Sophie's head flies off and zooms up into the air and the body starts to dance headless, or there's a huge robot neck. She leant back, hands on her face, crying and thinking of the leg. The black metal leg. She didn't want to look, but she had to. Sophie slept so peaceful. What if I pull back the covers and her body is all robotic, but it's not human? If it's in some other shape, like a robot with 15 legs or something? What if she's not my daughter? What if she's not my Sophie anymore? What if she's evil? My God, please, please leave us alone. Make it stop. Make it a bad dream. Make it normal again. With a hand over both eyes, she ripped back the covers, whimpering. She wiped her nose on her sleeve. Her breathing slowed to an eventual, troubled normality as she saw Sophie in her pyjamas, both feet as fine as always. She sat on the bed, feeling incredible relief, yet traumatized by the flow of emotion. For a few minutes she relaxed, reclaiming her center and letting Sophie sleep. She tried to figure out what had happened. Surely it had been a dream. She had been having very vivid dreams the last week. Surely she'd been in the kitchen dreaming, or dreaming about being in the kitchen, and then dreamt that Sophie had her leg replaced. It was horrible, but better than the dream she'd had after the arm incident, where all of Sophie was replaced. She thought about the thing in Sophie's arm. Had it even been real? Did it even happen? Could things like that happen? Surely they couldn't. For a moment she was certain that had been a bad dream too. It had to have been. But it wasn't. She looked at Sophie next to her on the bed, sleeping. Her hands and feet were fine. Surely the leg replacement had been a dream as well. Karen had a sudden, despairing thought. She slipped the sleeve of Sophie's arm up. The thin, perfect scars and whiter layer of skin on the outer forearm was still there. That was the evidence the metal in the arm had been no dream. Again her heart began to thud, as if breaking or broken or tilted out of place, and she was aware that she was coated in sweat, that her body was heating up sweat that was already there. She remembered so quick and powerful how she had felt gazing up Sophie's leg at that horrendous anomaly from her thigh down, and almost fainted again. She wished then with such intensity that she could swap her life for someone else's. It was a selfish thought until she included Sophie in it, and included her entire family in it. She went back to wishing there had never been an invasion to the young one at all. She reached down to Sophie's pyjama leg. She slid it up. After lifting the leg a little in the air, it looked completely normal. Sophie continued sleeping. The bottom of the fabric was at Sophie's shin, and Karen felt like she would start crying again. She slid it past the knee. When she touched the scar, she screamed. Thank you, my friends. Good night.